When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, hit and run. User, Fuller file. Posted, September 14th, 1998.
I ain't the kind of guy to scare easy, and I don't say that with ego. I've just been through way too much for that. Grew up rough, worked rougher, and seen more things than I care to remember. Again, I'm not gloating. I swear, I've just been through too much in my life. But what happened to me last week, man, I don't even know how to put it into words. I spent most of the evening down at Sully's, knocking back beers, half watching whatever game was on the TV and pretending like I give a shit, while in reality, I was just trying to drink in solitude. Hit that perfect spot where I ain't drunk, but just loose enough to feel like I could drive home without a problem, and of course, finish off the job when I got there. This has never been a problem in the past, since the freeway is pretty dead on weeknights anyway. Nothing but me and the occasional trucker burning miles down the highway. Well, I was about 5 minutes from home when it happened. I'd just gotten off Jefferson and was driving down the hill onto the back roads when 1 second, there ain't nothing there, and the next, boom. It hit so fast, I barely had time to register it. Something slammed into my front fender hard enough to jolt the whole truck. My hands went tight on the wheel, and I stomped the brakes, tires screeching as I pulled to the shoulder. My heart was pounding, and my first thought was, shit, I hit a dog. Well, or maybe a coyote. There were plenty out this way. I sat there for a second, gripping the steering wheel, trying to catch my breath. And then I threw the truck in park and climbed out. The night was real quiet, like the world was holding its breath. My headlights stretched long across the pavement, cutting through the dark, but there was nothing there. No dog, no coyote, no movement, and no sound except for the wind in the trees, and nothing to see but the gently moving shadows they cast. I walked around the truck, checking the road, the ditch, the shoulder. There was nothing. Nada. Not even a spot of blood. What the fuck just happened? I stood there for a long time, rubbing the back of my neck, trying to shake off the weird feeling creeping up my spine. I knew I hit something. I felt it, but there was nothing there. So I did what anyone else would do. I got back in the truck and drove home. That should have been the end of it. When I got home, I threw on the tube and had a couple more cans of America's Finest before tapping out for the night. But even with that warm buzz shooting through my veins, I couldn't sleep for the life of me. I kept hearing things. First, it was just little noises, creaks, the wind pushing against the old siding, normal house sounds, but then, around 2 in the morning, I heard scratching. It started soft, like nails lightly scraping across wood, and then it got worse. Long, slow drags of something against my front door. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my pulse hammering in my throat. My bedroom window faced the driveway, and I didn't want to look, but I had to. I forced myself up, crept over, and pulled back the curtain. The porch was empty. The truck sat there where I left it. The road stretched out, dark and still. But the feeling in my gut didn't go away. I sat awake until dawn, heart pounding, waiting for something I couldn't explain. When the sun finally came up, I felt stupid. Not only was I fucking tired and hungover, but I still had no idea what had happened the night before. Had I really hit something? Was something going on in this fucking house? I had been living here alone now for about 5 years, ever since Sylvia passed away, and never had I experienced anything like this. Not a single night, even amidst all the grief I felt from losing her. So why now? I guess that thing with the truck just got me rattled. As I threw on some clothes, I started calming down a little. It was probably a branch against the house or a raccoon, and my mind was just messing with me. You need to lay off the beer, I thought to myself, followed by a chuckle. Yeah, lay off the beer, all right. But then I went outside. The damage to my truck was worse than I thought. There was a dent in my front fender deep enough to piss me off. But the worst part was the blood. Dried, smeared across the metal. Not much, but enough. I crouched down, running my fingers over it. It was dark, crusted. I should have seen it last night, should have noticed this dent, the smear of something dark like this on the grill. I stepped back, eyes scanning the gravel around my truck, and that's when I saw them. Tracks. Not paw prints, footprints. Bare and human, but yet not. The shape was off. They were too long, too narrow, like whatever made them wasn't built right. They led from the road to my truck and then back into the woods. I might have seen some shit in my life, from an abusive as fuck stepfather beating the crap out of my mom to some fucking horrific shit during my time in the state pen, but this made my stomach turn in a way I have never felt. At least I knew what was causing those horrors. I knew what danger was in front of me, but this, fuck me. Quickly, I backed down, my gut twisting, that sick, sinking feeling settling deep in my chest. I thought about the scratching at the door, the feeling of being watched. Whatever I hit, it didn't stay in the road, and it knew where I lived. It knew how to find me. I haven't slept a single fucking wink since, no matter how much I pour down my throat. What if, whatever it is, comes back? What if it's pissed? What if it wants revenge?
Subject: The Girl in the Attic. User: For Fallman. Posted August 16th, 1996.
For the last 4 years, I've been living in a haunted attic, and I've just about had enough. The apartment, if you want to call it that, was a deal as far as renting in San Francisco goes, but when you factor in the paper-thin windows and constant chill, the value starts to drop. My landlady, Cynthia, is no picnic either. She's deaf as a post and plays the morning news at a volume roughly equivalent to two planets crashing into one another. I don't think I've slept past 6 a.m. the entire time I've lived here. Even the ghost girl who started showing up next to my bed after a couple weeks was something I eventually got used to, but lately, things have begun to escalate, and man, I just want out. Finding somewhere to rent in the Bay Area that wasn't a garbage heap or required me to have half a dozen roommates wasn't easy, so when Cynthia offered me the place after one viewing, I jumped at it. She talks constantly and has an unusual accent, Eastern European maybe, so I didn't catch everything she said on that first day. When I woke up to find a red-headed teenager standing over me, I thought she was a granddaughter whose existence I had missed. My next thought was, if I don't get her out of here, I'm going to end up on some kind of registry. As gently as possible, I said hello to the girl and asked if she was related to Cynthia. She gave me a 1,000-watt smile and blinked right out of existence. Here 1 minute, gone the next. It was the damnedest thing. Prior to this, I wasn't one to believing in anything you might call X-Files-esque. If you could see it, it was real. If you couldn't, it was bullshit. That was my motto. Well, I saw that girl just fine and was wide awake to boot, so I had to chew on that for a while. If she hadn't come back every few days, I might have found a way to write the whole thing off, but as it was, I had to find a way to fold this discovery into my worldview. She didn't do any typical ghost stuff, rattling chains, moaning, anything like that, but instead would watch me or lounge around reading a book. You haven't lived until you can't sit on your couch because a ghost is sprawled out on it reading Archie comics. She never spoke or tried to communicate in any way, but she was as aware of me as I was of her. That much I know for sure. We settled into a rhythm, and I started to think of her as the ghost daughter I never had or haven't had yet. Early last month, around the 10th of September, her demeanor began to change for the first time. Her smile dimmed, and she began to look pensive, spending less time with the comics and more just staring out the window. Her shifting mood affected me too, or at least that's what I thought was happening. I began to feel more on edge, less patient. There were a couple times I almost shouted at Cynthia for all that early morning racket, barely managing to hold myself back. It took me a couple weeks, but I eventually recognized the feeling. It was the same one I used to get when my old man was late coming home from work. If he was late, it meant he'd been at the bar, and that turned my evenings into a powder keg. You were on tenterhooks those nights, waiting to see how bad he was going to be. It was never a case of if he'd be angry, just how much. This felt like that, like I was waiting for something bad to happen. That something bad arrived just after the 1st of October, and like I said at the top, it's gotten bad enough, I want out. The dreams were first, nasty bastards about drowning or being torn apart by dogs. I never had phobias about either of those things, but the dreams were so vivid, now I'm careful around both. Next up was the chanting. I thought it was more of Cynthia's adventures in TV viewership, but then it happened while she was out at bingo one night. Thinking she'd left the set on, I went downstairs to turn it off, but the whole place was dark and the chanting was less audible. Coming back upstairs, it increased in volume to the point where it felt like I should be able to see whoever it was right in front of me. When it finally stopped, the light bulb in my bedside lamp burst like a backed-up drain pipe. If it wasn't for the lampshade, my whole bed would have been covered in fragments of glass. When I went to bed last night, I hadn't been asleep more than a few minutes before I felt someone get in bed next to me. Under ordinary circumstances, I'd have jumped a mile, but the noise and the light already had me in a, okay, what's coming next kind of place. Opening my eyes, I saw that the redheaded girl was in bed with me, and the fear in her eyes dispelled all my discomfort about sharing a bed with a strange kid, dead or otherwise. Her mouth was moving like she was trying to say something, but no sound came out. Over and over, she made the same movements, which I slowly identified as the words, "He's coming." My plan is to get both me and the kid out of here ASAP. Can ghosts move house? I don't know, but we're going to find out before I have to know who he is, where he's coming from, or why.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.